Let's talk about simple text animations. Text animations are the bread and butter of many motion designers. I'm going to show you 7 super simple dynamic text animations you could easily bust out. Before we get into it, I want to preface this by saying you should only be watching this if you kind of know your way around After Effects. I move pretty quickly and I'm assuming you have a basic working knowledge of After Effects. With that said, let's get started. So for the first one, I've got my text here, and each line is on its own layer. I'm going to want to create a track map for each of these layers to hide behind. So I'm going to create a rectangle below my first line of text here, make sure the newly created shape is on top of the text layer you want to be hidden behind it. You'll want to repeat this for the other 2 lines of text. Next, you'll select Alpha Inverted Matte under Track Matte, and it should automatically turn the visibility of your shape layer to off. Repeat this step for the other 2 layers, and now we can animate. I'm going to come in about 8 frames or so and keyframe my position on all of these. I'm going to come back to the start of my timeline, and with all of the text layers selected, I'm going to drag them behind my track mats. I'm going to ease my end keyframes. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to do an 80% influence. You can use the graph editor to do this, or the motion script too, like I do. The last thing I like to do is offset the animation. I'm going to drag my second layer over 2 frames, and I'll drag my third layer over 4 frames, so that way it's offset by 2 frames. Playing it back, you can see this is super simple, but looks fantastic. Moving on to the next one, we start again with the same 3 lines of text. This one is even more simple. I'm going to come in about 30 frames or so and create a keyframe on the position for all 3 layers. I'll back up to the beginning of the timeline and move these layers up ever so slightly. The effect we're going for here is super subtle. Ease those end keyframes. Again, I'm going to do about 80% influence. Next, you'll want to come in about 12 frames and create a keyframe on the opacity for all 3 layers. Come back to the start of your timeline and move that opacity down to 0 on all 3 of those. Just like we did with the last one, we're going to offset the animations. Because this one is slower and more subtle, we're going to offset the layers by 4 frames instead of 2 this time. And look at that, super awesome. Okay, so moving on with number 3, we start from the same starting point with our 3 lines of text. Now I've actually chosen to keep all of my lines on the same text layer for this one. Luckily for us, getting this type on effect that we want is super easy inside of After Effects. There's literally a preset for it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you already know this. Under the effects panel, you'll search for typewriter. Once it pops up, you'll drag the effect over to your text. It'll automatically create start and stop keyframes. All you have to do from this point is figure out your timing. Someone who just started using After Effects literally yesterday could do this, right? Awesome. Now on to number 4. This one is super fun. So for this one, you'll see that I'm only starting with 1 word in the center of the screen. Make sure when you position your text that your text is centered in the paragraph panel. And if you need to after that, just recenter it in your comp. So just like some of the other ones, we're going to animate backwards. We'll come forward 5 frames and place a keyframe on our scale. Back up to the start and set the scale to something like 1000%. We then want to ease our end keyframe. I again like to do about 80% influence. What you do is completely up to you. Now we want to go to frame 2 and place an opacity keyframe back up to the beginning and set it down to 0. So it's only a 2-frame animation, super subtle opacity fade. So we now want to set up the transition to the next word. We want these words to appear super fast, so we're going to start our transition on frame 12. Set a keyframe for your scale and move forward about 3 keyframes, and set your scale to about 50%. We want to do a quick opacity fade on the way out as well, and you can actually just copy and paste your previous opacity keyframes here. After that, right click, go to Keyframe Assistant and click Time Reverse Keyframes. So this is just going to reverse those 2 keyframes so that it's fading out instead of fading in. We'll now duplicate this text layer and move it to frame 12. The second layer's animation is now starting when the first animation's transition out is beginning. So you get this cool effect. You can now change the text to whatever you want, and you'll repeat this process for any words that you want to flash on screen afterwards. All right, number 5. This is super simple, but it looks super sleek. As you can see, I've got all of my text laid out on 1 line here. You'll hit the little drop-down arrow on your text layer, open it up, and hop on over to this animated arrow. Hit it, come down, and select tracking. You get a little animator popping up in your layer over here. You want to move your timeline marker to about 50 frames or so and create a keyframe on tracking. Go back to the beginning and set tracking to 10. Ease your last keyframe just like we've done with all the others. I'm actually going to do 100% influence here because I want it to be super smooth when it comes in. Lastly, we want this to fade in, so create a quick 1 second or long so opacity fade in. As you can see, this is crazy easy and it looks really good. Okay, now to number 6. First thing we need to do is create a track mat. Just like we did on the first text animation, we will create a rectangle shape right below our text. Make sure once more that the newly created shape is on top of the text layer. Come on over here and choose Alpha Inverted Matte, and boom, the rectangle's visibility should be set to off now. And we're going to use another text animator to do this one, so once again you'll hit the little drop down arrow on your text and open it up. Hop on over to the animate arrow and click on position. Under the animator drop down you'll see we have the position X and Y coordinates. I'm going to set my Y axis to 80 and this will move it down. Your number might be different depending on how big your text is and how big your composition is, so you're just going to have to mess around with that, but basically you just want this text to be moved behind the track matte that you just created. Next, you'll want to go up to the range selector. By default, your end should be set to 100%. Make sure you're at the beginning of your timeline and create a keyframe on that baby. Let's go forward about 22 frames and put the end down to 0%. Put a little easing on the last keyframe if you feel so inclined, and boom, you're done. If you want to have the animation come on from left to right instead of right to left, you want to leave the end set to 100% and animate the start from 0 to 100%. Alright, so we're at the last one, number 7. It looks pretty similar to number 6, and in fact we're just adding to what we did in number 6. So let's keep this train rolling and add another position animator to this text layer. Open that bad boy up and set both the start and end to 100%. Make sure you're back at the beginning and create a keyframe for both the start and end. Let's jump forward 10 frames and set the end to 0%. Go forward a little more to about 24 frames in or so and set the start to 0% also. So playing it back, it looks the same, right? The trick is to come down to position on your second animator and set the y-axis to -45. Playing it back, you get this cool wave effect when it comes up, but it looks a little chunky, so I'm going to add a keyframe into the start to slow it down a little bit. Somewhere around frame 15 or 16, you'll want to set the start to about 20%. This will give the letters a little bit more of a curve as they're animating. And honestly guys, I just had to play around with this a lot to get it where I wanted. And honestly, that's how you guys should treat it as well. Just kind of play around with all of these things and see what works for you. Time them out exactly how you want them, and you'll get awesome results. And that's it. Let us know in the comments if you learned something today. If not, also let us know, because we definitely want to make sure that we're educating people here. Make sure to subscribe for future content, and we'll see you next time.